Greetings and salutations. As I've been sick for the last 2 weeks and therefore am still not finished with my other videos, I thought in the meantime I could share some of my previous creations with you. I've been messing around, experimenting with different techniques for creating phototaxidermy for about the last 16 years or so, specifically phototaxidermy of mythical creatures. I like to refer to this long-winded and rather ridiculous project as cryptotaxonomy. Why devote so many precious life hours to this rather strange pursuit? Well, I'm still trying to figure out the deeper motivations for that. On a superficial level, however, purely to please my own whimsical notions, one day I just thought to myself, I have always wanted my own griffin. Why don't I just make one? So I did. Meet Harold. He is a lesser Himalayan mountain griffin. He sits at about 60 centimeters tall and has the wingspan of an Emden goose. Literally. Harold is not entirely faux. As both my wing making and my taxidermy skills were very limited at the time, I solved the issue by attaching real taxidermied goose wings to the faux taxidermied griffin. Often mistaken for an owl, he does in fact have hind legs and a tail. As Harold has been with me for so long, he is unfortunately starting to look a little worse for wear. He has had claws pulled off by curious toddlers, fur and feathers tousled by many an admirer, and a very liberal covering of dust and grime. Next time I make a creature like Harold, I will definitely be making a purpose-built case to house him in. This fine fellow is affectionately referred to as Mr. Tumnus. Also made circa 2008 alongside Harold, Mr. Tumnus is a wall-mounted fawn bust. Made in a similar fashion to Harold, basically with expanding foam, air-dry clay and a liberal amount of naive enthusiasm. He measures approximately 22 centimeters beard to horn on a 47 centimeter tall wall plug. He has real taxidermy hand-painted glass deer eyes and fake human eyelashes. Responsible for frightening almost every small child that has visited my house in the last decade and a half, and still going strong. If I was to recreate this piece, I would definitely fancy up his baseboard and try to find a better result for the hairless parts of his face. Flocking, perhaps. Rutilius solitudo, otherwise known as the solitary desert fairy. You may have already seen my little video about restoring him. He was the first fairy I ever made, and I really wanted to break away from that Tinkerbell conception of the Fae and create something that felt more probable to actually encounter in some far-flung landscape. So I made this little fellow much more insectile. His wings are real dragonfly wings, so by necessity he had to be quite small. Made mostly out of wire, hot glue and curses, this little fellow was very tricky to build and was definitely part of the inspiration behind figuring out my own method for building fairy wings at a more agreeable scale. You may have also already made the acquaintance of this common water nymph, Nymphalidae aquus. This lovely little webbed stick creature was originally meant to sit in a vessel of some sort of liquid as a wet specimen. Unfortunately, I had neither the money nor knowledge base to entomb it in clear resin, nor any idea of what other more eco-friendly options would work without dissolving its little carapace. She ended up having her limbs hot glued on and sitting in the glass vessel sans carrier fluid. Mostly made from wire and polymer clay, her webbing was created by gluing together cling film and burning holes with an incense stick. Whilst this method worked a treat, it did not improve the fragrance of the incense. Unfortunately, it was also not very long-lasting. She fell to pieces after about a decade. Not too bad an innings, but far from archival. Whilst I have started remaking this particular sculpture, I do still need to do more R&D on how to get the fluids and the webbing to hold up long-term. And next we have this horror show of a beast. I have very little memory of making him at all. It was perhaps the result of a temporary demon possession, to be honest. I believe the body was constructed of mostly wire, string, hot glue and cardboard, but I can't be certain. I do remember that I used fish bones for teeth and alpaca wool for hair. The teeth are fed fine, the wool not so much. He's losing chunks like a bad home dye job. This was also my first attempt to make my own scaled up fairy wings, made from thread and clear packing tape. Whilst the thread wasn't a terrible concept, this particular execution was pretty lackluster. As menacing as this little beastie is, I do still have a fondness for him, alopecia and all. Final act on the ticket for today's video is these little darlings. I made these in 2017, once again employing mostly wire, hot glue and real insect wings. And once again I struggled with the diminutive scale required when using free-range bug wings, an incredibly frustrating and time-consuming process. These were the final fairy sculptures I made before embarking on a hell of a lot of futzing around with different materials and techniques to develop the methods that I am using today in my fairy sculptures. Being stuck in my house for so long at the start of the decade at least provided plenty of time for guilt-free creative experimentation. There have been many other unsuccessful attempts and aborted creations over the years, even a few others that did indeed come to fruition, but sadly I do not have good documentation on. I'm getting pretty itchy to start on a new type of taxidermy. In particular, I've always wanted to make a unicorn bust, a preserved mermaid baby wet specimen, and I probably should do some goblins. I'm thinking maybe shrunken heads. Let me know in the comments which your favourite idea is, or if you have any fresh ones. I have way more ideas crowding around in this noggin of mine than there will ever be time to bring forth onto this plane of existence. Nonetheless, I will keep attempting the task and sharing my creative misadventures with you as I do. As always, if you want to show me some support, you can do all the YouTubey things, or you can head over to my website where you can have a look at previous work that I've made, find links to all my socials, and other ways you can show support. You can even sign up to my newsletter if you feel so inclined, and receive updates, shop discounts, and the occasional free digital download. Alright, that's all for this one. Bye!